Nelson, alcoholic addict. That is not my real name. That is a fake name that I came up with to use for my newsletter. John Madden died recently. For those who don't know, he was a legendary sports broadcaster who was also very well known for pitching a zillion different products over the years and also putting his name on a video game that has changed the esports industry forever. So he's known for many, many different things. I ended up reading and listening to a lot of discussions about Madden and his impact, and I heard one story about him that really stuck with me. A TV producer who was friends with Madden said one time he was talking to John, and John said, "Hey, I got to run. I'm talking to this other TV producer, friend of mine. He's in his mid-20s." And Madden's friend gave him kind of a quizzical look and said something like, "John, you're 75 years old and retired. Like, how are you hanging out with somebody who's 25 years old?" And Madden replied that he had met this young guy once and he liked him and was rooting for him. And then he told his friend that how he thinks it's very important for people to always have friends in every age group. So he said he always has tried to have at least a friend or two in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. And he said when he was in his 30s, he was making sure he was talking to people in their 80s and 90s. He wanted that wide range of friends. And his friends still had like kind of a befuddled look on his face, and Madden began to elaborate. And he said he thought it was just very valuable to have wisdom from all age groups and demographics. And he said he saw too many 20-year-olds who only talked to 20-year-olds and too many 55-year-olds who only heard from other 55-year-olds. And wow, that hits home for me when it comes to recovery. That's why I'm talking about this right now. I have gone through many phases in sobriety regarding my circle of support. And at the beginning, I was 32 years old when I got sober, and I had a mix of other 30s people who were new to sobriety. Most of them were people that I met at rehab. And then I also had a large group of men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who had long periods without drugs and alcohol. I eventually migrated more toward the old timers because there was a lot of relapsing going around with all the people from rehab, all the people from my peer group. And I felt like that I should stick with people who had what I wanted. And I saw a lot of that in men who were 50, 60, 70 years old with lots of sobriety under their belt. But a few years into sobriety, I found myself gravitating more toward people at a similar stage of their life. So I was in my late 30s or early 40s. I was married with kids. I was doing okay in my career, but I was not the CEO of my company. And so I liked being around people who were battling a lot of the same stuff I was at the same time in their life. I really liked that. But I also have subscribed to something similar to what John Madden described. No matter where I've been in recovery, I almost always have ended up talking regularly with somebody who's, I'm making up ages here, but like people who are 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, and 75. I don't have a lot of people above 75 in my inner circle, but I'm happy to keep adding. If you are a 100-year-old dude who wants to talk, count me in, call me. So you might be wondering, like, why is that beneficial? And I'd say, I love the different brands of wisdom people at all these different stages of life bring. I love the energy of young people in recovery because I often end up seeing people who are just getting started in sober life and they're busting their asses to make sure they stay sober. There's an incredible amount of hunger in their eyes and in their recovery programs. And sometimes the heat from that star is enough to power me a little bit too. I'm 44 now, so I like talking to 45-year-olds who might have teenagers and are looking at college applications and learner's permits for young drivers and middle management headaches, because that's where I am. That's the experience I'm living right now in my life. I also love learning from others in that general demographic about how they keep their recovery fresh. I found it pretty easy to fall into a pattern of just hitting the same meetings, talking to the same people, hearing the same people at meetings, reading the same books. I love the idea of getting into a groove in recovery, but it's a thin line sometimes. I don't want to cross over into complacency. And so getting comfortable and getting complacent are like next door neighbors on the same street in my life. I got to really be careful of that. It's a dangerous spot for me to be in. So I like hearing other moms and dads who have some sobriety under their belt and who are pushing themselves to not just stay sober, but get more sober. I want to be around those people. I guess if I had to summarize like why that thought from John Madden spoke to me so much, I think it's that I found there's no sobriety requirement for wisdom. I've met 30-year-olds with 5 years sober who say the most valuable thing I've heard all day. And then I've met 72-year-olds with 25 days sober, and they provide me with something that made me more sober that day. It doesn't matter where it comes from. I do think I raise my chances of having an awesome, balanced program by talking to all ages, all sobriety dates, and not just closing that off. So rest in peace, John Madden, and thank you for the reminder about to constantly look at what my inner circle looks like. Thanks for letting me share.